please meet Henry. And Henry, you can just kind of give a quick introduction on yourself. And the floor is yours.
Sure. Are you sure you don't mind if I go first, Matt?
No, honestly, please be my guest. Go first.
Nice to meet you. Hello, everybody. Apologies in advance. I have a bit of a cough and a cold, so bear with me if I start to splutter. Really nice to be part of the meeting tonight. Thank you, Sean, for the invite. My name is Henry, and I have worked in. Can you hear me? Can you thumbs up? Can you hear me? Okay. Am I on the big screen, by the way?
You
Or
are.
am I just okay? Cool, awesome.
I think if you show you the screen, it'll do one of those like falling into itself 1,000 times. So I'm not going to do it. But yes,
Okay, fantastic. Just wanted to check that. So I have a background in marketing, CRM, nonprofits, and politics. Kind of where politics and technology meet, and broadly sort of consumer facing and B2B marketing. I'm working on a mobile app at the moment. I met Sean a couple of years ago, and I live in Lisbon, but I'm visiting family at the moment. So really interested in Nocode. My Nocode journey is super early, but very interested in attending this meetup potentially in person one day. Sean asked me to talk about Amplitude. Fair warning, I'm not even sure if Amplitude is officially no code, but it's a super cool tool, and we'll be delighted to show you folks. Also, sort of fair warning, I'm no expert and I've never demoed it before. I've been using it since February, but I really like it. So if nothing else, I'm super enthusiastic about it. Can you hear me okay, Sean?
Yeah. Yep. I'm just making it so you can share your screen. I'm assuming you're going to want to at some point.
I'm going to share my screen now because I think you're bored of my voice. Okay, so stand by. Disclaimers aside, let's see. Cool. So can you see? Maybe I should just do one thing. It's a bit weird, actually. 1 second. Just going to do one little thing. To make it easier to see. Stand by. Okay, great. So I'm going to do a demo version of Amplitude. I've never done this before. I'm not going to show any real, or I don't believe it's real data. It's not my data. It's I think a sales or demo account. Can you guys see? Thumbs up. You can see Amplitude. Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to spend like 10 minutes maybe. I think that's probably enough of my voice. I hope that's okay, Matt. Sorry to keep you waiting in the wings there. So what is Amplitude? Well, my definition is what I know it to be, but I'm sure there's lots of ways to define it. But I think of it as a product analytics tool, and it essentially monitors how your users are behaving within your app or within your tool. It's not just that, and there's a lot of bells and whistles that make it a really, really important part of, I think, any product tech stack. I use this product, Amplitude, and a tool called Braze. Braze is a customer engagement tool for primarily mobile apps. And when you combine it with a tool like Amplitude, it gets really, really powerful. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I probably want to talk about what the core product is. So it's like your sort of general analytics tool. It's a little bit like Mixpanel if you've used it, and I really like it. We're looking at a dashboard right now, and Amplitude's kind of made up of these kind of core elements, basically. You've got spaces, which are sort of places to hold all your charts and reports. You've got dashboards and notes that you can write and kind of visualize all the data. You can create cohorts, which I'll talk about in a second, which is super interesting for not just analysis, but also for sending to other tools, which is really, really, really helpful. And I'd say it's kind of no code. It's actually like definitely a good example of no code there. Very, very limited technical nous needed, kind of once it's up and running. And then analysis analysis. So before I build a chart, we can just look at the kinds of charts that Amplitude shows. This dummy data, I think, is a music company, like Spotify, I think it is. So you've got analysis of user events, so things that users are doing. You've got analysis of events by different attributes of the event, so song genres. And then you've got kind of just a lot of first-party data, so like behaviors and all sorts of things. You can probably guess all the things that you can track. It's other products do this, so I'm not going to claim that it's sort of groundbreaking, but it's super easy to build. And the other thing that's really cool is that you can, I'm going to go ahead and build a chart, but you can choose from a bunch of pre-baked types of charts. And in my job, I look at not just segmentation, but I look at funnels and retention charts, which are super powerful. So let's look at quick segmentation. This is probably the building block of Amplitude. And first up, you choose the event that you want to show. So we'll choose a really basic one. Do a user signed up. And then you can cut this data by different attributes or segments of your users. So you can show different user properties. So everything that you've collected, either from the user itself or sort of by their devices. So the most basic is, you could slice it by the platform. So we could go for Android users. And then you could add another segment if you wanted, and you could add iOS users. And yeah, this is sort of the most basic way to just see how many times an event is happening. And you'll see Android and all users below, so I haven't segmented. You can also group by properties, which is nice, and split it out automatically. And yeah, this is like all fairly expected behavior, I think, from an analytics tool. Not that groundbreaking, but actually really, really user-friendly. You can turn these into cohorts and things like that, and everything you expect. What's cool though is you can turn these into funnels, so you can see, from a user signing up to a user playing a song on this fictitious audio streaming tool. You can see what the conversion rate is, and then you can cut it by different attributes, and it's really interesting to see, what is the conversion rate for users from a specific source? What's the conversion rate by platform? So right now we're looking at a chart of what's the conversion rate for web app users playing a song versus iOS and Android. Again, very, very simplistic analytics. I mean, questions that we're asking, you can go much deeper. Where it gets really fun though is retention, I find. And there's a ton of really interesting charts that are really helpful for sort of discovering trends. What I've shown obviously is when you know which questions to ask. What I look at in my job a fair bit are retention charts. So let's see what they have here. Any active event. So apologies if you folks know about retention, but for those who don't, there's two types of retention. There's end day retention, and then there's unbounded retention. End day retention is a user doing the first event and then coming back on a specific day. So day 7 retention means what percentage of users sign up and then come back to the app literally on day 7. The other type is unbounded, which is how many people sign up and then come back on day 7 or later. I'm going to butcher the reasons why we choose one over the other. And I'm not going to attempt to do it right now because my brain is all fluey, but these are super helpful. I use these all the time. I look at marketing campaigns and see with Braze, you can sync the data, so you can see how marketing and onboarding and lifecycle marketing, like onboarding of users, is affecting retention. which is really, really handy. And then you can see, by different groups of users or users who take specific actions, how does that affect retention? So it's actually pretty incredible what you can do with this, and it's all baked into the product. So I really like this. Then where I think Amplitude is fantastic is in its sort of interoperability. I think that's a word, or just its connectedness to other apps. So how I use that is I actually do a lot of targeting of specific users in Amplitude, and then I send those as cohorts to other apps. I send them to Braze. So you can create cohorts of users and then sync them. So people who did a specific thing, and then you can save it and then sync it to other applications. So I send data the whole time to Braze, which means I don't have to send all the data from our apps to Braze. I can save money on that side, which is super powerful. It's also super powerful for doing cohort analysis and creating static cohorts for analysis. So it's a really, really great tool for that. The other thing that I really like is this new feature. I think it's in beta, but is sending what's it called? Events to other applications. So I'm not sure how all other applications work, but some of the ones I use, they charge you by data points. And it gets expensive if you send all of your application's data to that service. So for Braze, you get charged by monthly active users, and you get charged by, I think it is data points per user. So it can get expensive pretty quickly if you have a lot of users. So a really cool thing that you can do in Amplitude is actually send, and this is, I think, actually a really kind of a really interesting no code, so to speak, part of Amplitude, is you can send specific events to these applications. I hope that makes sense, but I mean, you don't want to send, for instance, like all the users who are signing up or that event itself. You want to maybe send a small segment of it, and Amplitude helps you do that, which is really awesome. In addition to being able to send cohorts. So yeah, it's super powerful. And yeah, I've used it extensively in the last sort of 8-9 months. And then I think someone on this group is a product manager, or a few people are, I couldn't quite hear, but and maybe you've used Amplitude, so forgive me, because you're probably a very rudimentary run through. But something I've also used from more of a product kind of management tool is this offering by Amplitude called Experiment. And it's really, really interesting. You can run A/B tests. I think it needs to be, it doesn't have, it's not set up, but you can run A/B tests in your product using Amplitude, which is super handy. And you set up sort of feature flags and have people run completely different journeys using kind of, different weighting 50-50 A/B tests. So it's really, really great. And all that data is obviously captured in Amplitude. So really, really interesting. I've done it for onboarding experiments and taking users to different parts of the app I work on. And yeah, it's a really powerful all-in-one tool. A few caveats, and then I'll stop talking. I think it's quite expensive. I don't know how much it costs. And I think to actually get it set up, it probably needs a fair bit of engineering-ish. I'm not sure, I've never done it myself. But I think it qualifies for no code in some ways because of the integrations. And once it's set up, it's pretty turnkey after that point. The other thing is, I think it's an enterprise tool. I don't know if it's like the market is sort of marketed towards sort of single entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, but who knows, maybe it is. Anyways, I hope that is of interest, and yeah, happy to take any questions. Yeah, any thoughts or anything, Sean?
No, that was excellent. Thank you. I would echo. So I agree that I believe it is geared more towards enterprise, although their plan, I think their base plan is pretty generous. It's like 10 million events or something like super, but there's just not a lot of support for the common user. I think it is geared more towards the enterprise.
Yeah, I have one of my clients actually is a startup, the application is based in Bubble. And I think they have kind of a special program for those types of startup or something like that. I'll check in my mail because I received the copy. And it was very convenient because I'm right now integrating Amplitude with theirs.
Yeah.
So I do think that they are also, like, of course, they may target main segments in the price, but I think they have special programs and I think they can run for free for a certain period. And this is a startup that is already commercialized and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the difficulty of setup, it does have like a segment integration. So as long as you can make segment work, like a lot of these, I know Bubble has a plugin for segment and Adalo. And so anywhere where you can get segment as like the hub that you can register the service into, then it's just out of the box, it should work. So yeah, so I guess Henry, I have a question for you. So it seems like you're operating at any given moment, you're operating in one of two modes. It's almost like you have a theory that you're trying to test. And so this is a tool, it's just like collecting all this data. And then you could use it to say like, okay, we think that maybe Android users are staying longer and we want to go test that theory. And that's a very simple one. I'm sure you have a lot more complex. So it's like either you're testing a theory that you have, or you're like fishing and you don't know. You're just kind of seeing what you don't know and you're exploring the data to see what you learn. Like, how do you work with it day to day, I guess? Like, what are you doing most of the time?
It's a great question. I think of it in three ways. And in fact, I use Amplitude to analyze the work I do in Braze. I think it's a much more, for downstream events. So for conversion tracking and things like that, I think it does as good a job as Braze does. For things like email and push and in-app message analysis performance, then I use Braze. But in general for Amplitude, I think of it in three ways. There's definitely a danger of getting lost, and I've had to pull myself back quite a lot. But I think the most efficient way for me to use it, one is for monitoring. So I set up kind of early warning dashboards, health dashboards for my work. And that's really, really helpful. And those get emailed to me on a weekly basis or more often. And then, as you mentioned, I do a lot of hypothesis testing. So coming up with ideas to test and then monitoring the results. When I'm doing sort of in the right order, I often build the dashboards before even doing the tests, because that can inform the tests themselves. There's a really nice feature in Amplitude for experiments and also for analysis. They actually have, as part of the experiments, they sort of walk you through step by step of writing a brief beforehand and planning the experiment and talking about the hypothesis. So it's really sort of well thought of, and the education side of the product's excellent. And then the third part is what you said, which is kind of getting into the vortex and being curious. I would say that's a danger, and I have been guilty of getting lost a bit there. I still think you need to be structured when you're poking around, because if you have a couple of hundred events, you can just get completely into a vortex. But yeah, I think there's three ways of like defensive and sort of health tracking, and then experiment tracking, and then curiosity in probably in that order of importance, I think.
And the tool that you keep saying Braze, can you spell it?
For sure. It's a BRAZE. I don't work for either of these companies, by the way, huge disclaimer. And I'm not an expert neither. It was formerly called AppBoy. They're a really nice company, really good people, as is Amplitude as far as I know. And it's also an enterprise tool. I think it's probably quite high end, but it's a really powerful tool for sending push notifications, emails, in-app messages, texting. It's mostly around mobile apps, but you can use it for web apps. and it plays nicely with Amplitude. It was used to be called App Boy. It's probably about 9-10 years old. It's got very popular in the last 3 or 4 years. But yeah, no, it's cool. That's about it. I appreciate the question there. I think you probably heard enough from me.
Question. I know that you said it's mostly out of price, right? So it's this target plan. So my product would be very early and not so much traffic just yet. But at which point do you know if it's good to use the product like Amplitude or if it's like over engineering the thing? And I think my other question would be like, did you uncover cool, really interesting opportunities with the tracking with Amplitude, or it's not that relevant when you have like small traffic, or at least at the beginning?
Can you, Sean, could you or someone repeat the first bit? It's too echoey to hear, sorry.
It's a two-part question. So like one, appropriateness of when to use this tool if she's too early, like if she has a startup basically. So it's an early stage product, and is this overkill for what she needs? And how do you know? And then two, what was the second part of it?
Like, did you really uncover good opportunities
Yeah.
with this type of?
Yeah. Have you discovered like, have you had big wins from it? Has this like unearthed any kind of like major low-hanging fruit or big wins for the company that you discovered using the tool?
So the first part, I mean, is my opinion, I think, for whether to use this as a startup. I don't even know how much it costs, but it's probably enterprise. I mean, it's enterprise pricing. I don't know, but it might be overkill for like a day one startup. Probably it might actually require a fair bit of support maybe to get it up and running. So it might be overkill. I hope that maybe if you've not seen a tool like this, it might spark some kind of interest in similar tools, and I'm sure there's similar ones that are free. And I would say like definitely find a free equivalent if you can as early as possible, because I think there's huge value in being able to test your assumptions about how users behave. Obviously, Google Analytics and things like that are free, but I'm sure there are like pretty good options like Amplitude that are very, very low cost. And then, yeah, I mean, I think just being 100% like, I mean, you're essentially blind without it, and being able to come up with answers quickly or test quickly is absolutely invaluable. And in terms of huge wins, I mean, it's very much about your culture and your the questions you're asking and your experiment practices. And if you don't have those down, then sort of the junk in, junk out analogy applies. But yeah, I mean, in my work, absolutely. Just having the confidence and the ability to answer questions quickly, I think is a massive win. So yeah, 100% worth every dime from my perspective. But yeah, I would recommend, if you're building a product, to use tools that allow you to get to know your users really, really easily, and also allow you to run experiments without it taking lots of time, because that's the name of the game, I think.
Just to complement the information, they have, I just read the email that they sent to my client. They have a scholarship for startups, and that's what helps. It may still be an overkill depending on what you need from that. And just to contribute, one of the example more on the kind of testing track, and this is quite specific for Nocode, as it is so fast to develop new features in Nocode. What we do is like we get a simplified version of a new feature that they want to explore, and we just put it live. And what they want to do now with Amplitude is really track the use of that, the engagement that they have. And so they're putting out maybe features, but just like a very simple version, because it's fast with Nocode. And then they measure that, and then they select those that really live so kind of.
Yeah.
before she.
Give an interest in development, yeah. That's cool. Henry,
Awesome.
and I guess, is there any resource that you recommend for getting up to speed? Do you just kind of go tinker with it? Is it like, what's the best way to become proficient with it?
I think, I mean, I think there's a demo account which you can sign up for free. I can share it with you, Sean. I think they do a really good job of education as a whole around experimentation and analytics. Again, I'm not a power user, but yeah, I would suggest having a look at the demo account, and then sounds like there's a scholarship program. I'm not sure, but I think they're a super awesome company, really thoughtful around education. So I would maybe check out the Amplitude website as well.
Awesome. All right, any other questions for Henry? Well, all right, well, Henry, thanks so much, man. That's good, man.
Lovely to meet you all. Sorry not to be there in person. And Matt, thank you for waiting so patiently. I've gone way over time.
No, that's okay. It's super interesting for me to hear as well. We went down the mixed panel route, which is also, I think you get a number of events that are free, just like Amplitude. But it does get quite expensive quite quickly once you kind of go above that threshold. We've also been exploring Posthog, which is like an open source version of Amplitude and mixed panel. They do have like a cloud-based version as well. So I don't know, maybe worth exploring. We've never used that either. But yeah, I guess like quick intro from my side. My name's Matt Williamson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Visly, a embedded analytics platform, which I'll describe shortly. My background though, before this, I was the head of business development at a company called Duffel, which is like a flights and payments API, born out of London. And before that, I looked after commercial activity for data at Skyscanner for just under 5 years. So that was all about building and bringing APIs to market, as well as a SaaS analytics tool to market as well, which kind of really was the origin of Visly, at least at a conceptual level at that point. But yeah, I guess I'll just kind of like dive into a product demo. But just before I do that, actually, I will kind of full disclosure as well. There is a little bit of code needed to set up Visly, at least at the moment. We have we require all of our customers to self-host the query engine. So we basically give them a kind of a Docker image, which they host on their server. That speaks to the database, and it speaks to the dashboard when it renders in the browser. We're trying to reduce the setup time to hopefully a few hours. Right now it sits around like 1.5 days. So full disclosure, we do try, or will try to get as close to no code as possible. But that's just kind of like the state of affairs at the moment. But I will share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Matt, before you start, I think, are you able to talk about Stripe at all, or is that we can keep that on the down low?
Yeah, it's still we're still progressing to a stage where we can talk about that in kind of, I suppose, kind of in more detail. We have, I can explain the application, but basically Visly is embedded BI mainly for B2B SaaS applications. And so what we have been seeing over the last few years is that more and more B2B SaaS applications are including dashboards into their applications, be that to offer a more kind of, I don't know, user-centric experience, maybe to provide a competitive edge, whatever the case might be. It seems to be a common theme. We see a lot of analytics dashboards, I suppose kind of regardless of the industry or vertical, but we do see a lot of that mainly in fintech. So that could be like payments, accounting, payroll, whatever. So a lot of our customers do kind of come from that domain. We're fairly young as a company. We went full time in March. We got into Y Combinator S22 in June, and just came out of that at the end of September, and have since moved back from San Francisco to London to build and grow the company. We are totally remote across Europe, so don't really have a kind of like defined HQ. So I guess like happy to chat about like use cases in more detail, but what I'll do is I'll just like dive into the product, Sean, and then obviously feel free to like dive in with questions as we go through. We don't have the same kind of like a refined onboarding process as you might expect as like an Amplitude, although we do kind of aspire to kind of like be at that level. So I'll just kind of maybe verbally explain a lot about how to get set up with Vizzly, to kind of compensate for the lack of onboarding flow you see here. But like I said before, the query engine is hosted, self-hosted. So when you log on to Vizzly, you'll see this. We will introduce like a checklist and stuff, so you kind of know what to do, but this is what you see. We have kind of in-depth documentation to help people get set up. We have project examples we hold in GitHub. And of course, you can play around with the Data Studio. Now, this is a dashboard that I have created earlier. These things are really easy to build. So let's say, for example, I wanted to build this from scratch, or at least build a chart from scratch. All I'd have to do as Vizzly's customer would be click this little button, and I'd see this modal pop up, and I can either select a chart that's being pre-created by maybe me in the past or one of my team members, or I can create a new chart. At that point, I just hit the data set that I'm interested in, as you can see here, hit select, and then I can choose my chart type. Now, Vizzly auto-generates the chart, so it puts in a measure, it puts in either a dimension or a time variable, just to show you really what that looks like. Now, of course, you can manipulate this to your heart's content. You're in complete control over that experience, and you can change anything you want from, you know, the heading to group or stacked bar chart. Do you want to add in like a local filter, for example, so that your users can manipulate certain variables to display different data? And at that point, it gets added to the chart library. And you just have to click on it and add it to the chart, dashboard rather. Now, all the stuff I'm showing you here is the functionality your customers will have. So our customers' customers. I know that sounds a bit meta and somewhat confusing. Now, the unique thing about Vizzly, and I'm sure there's probably a few questions around this. Well, one is the fact that the end user, so again, our customer's customer, can self-serve. They're not just given a standardized dashboard, a one-size-fits-all solution. The end user can change the composition of the dashboard should they want. They'll be given a default state, of course, but they can edit charts, create new charts, and really explore the underlying data so they can pull the insights out that they want. So let's say just in the context of like Stripe or maybe another company similar to that. Right now, every merchant has a standardized dashboard. They also have a product called Sigma, which is basically a SQL text editor, which is quite complicated. But what about those merchants who maybe aren't data literate, who don't know SQL, who maybe find it easier to explore data in a more visual manner? They would use something like Vizzly. And that way they can pull out the insights that they care about the most, without feeling intimidated at the fact that they need to learn how to query a database. What I will say, I'll just quickly save that. And I want to show you just one thing. So let's say, for example, you've set up your query engine, you've built your dashboard here, and you go to the live dashboards page. Now, let's say for this dashboard ID, I'm going to copy the code here, and that is what I'm going to paste into my code base for that to render. We use React-based components. It's not an iframe. Some of you will be glad to know. I have a personal disdain for iframes, mainly because of the kind of poor kind of developer and end user experience they kind of elicit. But that's typically how the implementation process runs. So set up with the query engine, and of course, once you build the dashboard in that kind of no code manner, you just copy and paste the code over, and you're good to go. Okay. Going back to the dashboard, I'm going to put this in preview mode, so you can see what this would look like once it's been embedded inside of a SaaS application. So let's say, for example, this has been embedded inside Stripe. This can, by the way, this can be made to look and feel exactly like Stripe. We have like basic style properties you can edit in the UI, or you can edit the style properties in a CSS box, if you know a bit of CSS. But we have a kind of aggressive attitude towards native design, and we want this to look and feel exactly like whatever customer application this sits in. But like I said, the end user can obviously do basic things like manipulate global filters and of course local filters, as you would expect in virtually any BI tool. But what they can do as well, like I showed you earlier, is edit the composition of these charts. And they might say, do you know what, this metric's not interesting to me, neither is this, neither is this. And I kind of want to split this out by day. And maybe I want to, I don't know, change like the sorting direction or something. They can also add like new metrics in through the calculated fields feature we have. It doesn't require them to know any fancy Excel formula. They just choose a metric, choose the operator, choose another metric, and multiply, add, whatever, them together. That's how we create a new metric. Anyway, create the chart, hit confirm, and they've adjusted it. The end user can also add charts in from the chart library, which our customer will set up. And that way, the end user just has to point and click, and it's really, really simple. And if they really want, they can build their own chart from scratch. And do whatever they want to do. Before they add in. That's going to come in as a bar chart. A bit funny, but we are a startup. Okay, so that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of the, I suppose, how easy it is to build and deploy a very high level of Visly dashboard, and the capability it offers to the end user, and what that means from a kind of data exploration and visualization point of view. In terms of like roadmappy things, we're going to make it like really, really easy. Well, we want to make it like, long term, really, really easy for B2B SaaS companies to share data with their customers. That's kind of the objective here. So but the data points also need to be kind of actionable, right? So we'll shortly introduce things like alerting, so that you can maybe click this drop down here, set up a threshold, which one of your metrics hits a certain value, and then you can receive a WhatsApp message, an SMS, maybe an email, alerting you to that data point hitting that threshold. And things like that we can do just to make this a little bit more kind of engaging. The underlying business thesis of by integrating this comprehensive analytics experience into your application, we can improve customer engagement and customer retention. Right now, a lot of the dashboards that people build, like I said before, these one size fits all experiences just don't go far enough, and it leads people to exporting to Excel. It leads people to requesting API access, which is an awful lot of friction to build a data pipeline to plug it into Tableau or something, when all they really need is just a more flexible dashboard inside that SaaS application to avoid any overkill or over application of engineering resource. Okay, cool. Sean, should I go over anything more? What do you suggest?
I want to clarify just so, does everyone understand that like there's two layers to here? So what he's really talking about is like his customer would be like, let's say you're his customer with the recruiter side. So the end user of this though would be like the employers using the site. Like let's say they all want like some custom insight into how people are interacting with their job ads, then they're the end users, but you're the customer. paying for this service. So that's what this is. It's like a tool that's 2 layers deep, really. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question.
Go for it, Henry.
Sorry, just really quickly, this is awesome. Funnily enough, so the use case here for Braze, they're B2B, but they have hundreds of customers, or sorry, thousands of customers who want customized reports, and they have to standardize them, and I'm constantly asking for different data. Having this would be awesome. I get sent Looker reports, but it's not in app. So yeah, I'm surprised this doesn't exist already. It's really smart.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I guess there's this kind of thing as well. So like we've spoken to so many people who will share Google Data Studio reports. Now I think they're called Looker Studio reports. And they'll share them periodically. But you could very easily bring that into your application and benefit from that user engagement if you just had something that was easy to embed. Tableau do have an embedded analytics product, but it's kind of like an afterthought of the overall product, and it's super slow, impossible to customize so that it adheres to your brand guidelines. It kind of looks really out of place and juxtaposed with your UI. And of course, it renders in an iframe. So generally a poor developer experience. Again, it adds latency, and it's not necessarily the most secure way to load data. And these are all just things that are like a function of it being an afterthought. But what we're trying to do is build for customer facing application like as a primary use case, and kind of really chip away at that little niche of BI.
Matt, can you, just to clarify on the iframe, the disadvantages of using an iframe are, can you just reiterate what you just said?
Yeah, sure. So I appreciate this is more kind of like the lens of like developer experience, but and iframes are fantastic in a kind of no code sense when it comes to maybe loading like a form in a web page. There's nothing wrong with maybe going down the route of an iframe, but when it comes to a dashboard where you have sometimes like a lot of data loading at once, it can cause a lot of friction in the sense that it will just take a long time to load. If you have something that's quite complex within that iframe that you want to look and feel like the application, like Tableau, for example, it can be quite difficult to make it look and feel exactly like your brand based on like the design system you have in place. And I think just I hesitant to kind of comment about this specific item, but because it's more of kind of like through the developer experience lens, but you can't speak to the contents of that iframe as a developer. We use React components so the developer can speak to what's going on inside the dashboard, and they're much happier because it reduces the time to set up, and it's overall a much faster, cleaner experience.
Noticing as from a front-end developer's perspective, how does theming work? Is it CSS variables? Is it like a React context?
How does the stylization work? Sorry.
Yeah. How does the theming?
Cool. So I will pop my screen up again. So we have two ways of allowing you to customize the design. We have one super rudimentary way, which you may or may not laugh at, and one more kind of in advanced way. And so this is the kind of like basic way. We just expose a handful of style properties like the color of the charts, the font, the color of the buttons. We actually just today deployed our little CSS box, and that allows people to customize virtually any style property you see in the dashboard. And that's quite unique to Visly, to be honest, if you look at the kind of embedded BI landscape, and that way we can really make it look quite native. But we'll have soon this will be like a basic and advanced toggle, so that you could technically do it in a completely no code way, or you could do it in a more kind of like detailed technical way. Hopefully that answers the question though.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much. I just saw your site, yeah, so it's doing better, and you don't have any information for pricing right now. Of course, I can will went that direction, but just what is the type of format that you're looking for? Is it like per not user, but so per tenant that we have, or in a SaaS, or how it's going to be? And then it's just explain my question. Most of companies that I work for, they are of course much smaller startups, and they are very much okay to have something that pays by tenant, by user. It is like marketplaces, those for consultants or whatever, they could embed this. But if you say like, okay, there is a value here just to get started and it's pretty high, then it's usually a no-go for them, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I would love to just get your thoughts and opinions on that as well, because we're still learning, and like we don't have a pricing model on the page because we're not confident in our pricing model, and so we're constantly experimenting. What I will say is that we want to move to a usage-based pricing model, but also have some sort of SaaS fee there as well, so we can kind of have that an element of like hard recurring revenue to our business model. We will likely have a freemium tier, which will have or won't have features like the ability to customize the design of it, and it will say powered by Visly, and you will know it's a Visly dashboard, and so will benefit hopefully from the virality of that brand recognition in the same way that and other embedded products do, like Cover Genius, for example. Like when that's embedded in a workflow, you know you're using Cover Genius, and you're going to benefit from that network effect in a sense. And so we'll have a freemium tier, at least most likely, that will have that kind of level of brand recognition, and to unlock certain features, we'll probably have some sort of like incremental pricing model, and maybe something that's usage based baked into it. Then, like you said, maybe it'll be per account, per user, but it will certainly be per tenant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, so how does Visly ingest data? Does it connect to my database, or do I send in events?
Yeah, it connects to your database. So we actually started out, and like we used to be totally no code. You could build Visly. When we entered YC, you could build a chart or dashboards and connect data without writing any code. But our problem was that people didn't like us storing their data. People also didn't like duplicating their data stores and fragmenting their data model. And we were hesitant to change the way we were doing things because we loved the idea of being no code. And it was just, like this really cool thing where you just, come build your dashboards, like 10 clicks, you've got a dashboard, copy and paste the code, off you go. Right now, we've obviously kind of changed things, and that Docker image will speak to your database. You obviously have to enter your database credentials and write the SQL queries. So that's what I mean in terms of it's probably more low code than no code. But yeah, you still have to execute the queries. We support Postgres, Elasticsearch, BigQuery, and unofficially MySQL. And we just build database integrations and data warehouse integrations on demand as and when customers ask for them.
Okay, yeah. So I'd have to write some careful queries to make sure that the multi-tenancy is working like I want it to work, and customers can only see their own data. And
we take care of that as well. We take care of that.
which is
So we would give you an SDK to help you set up the multi-tenancy. You wouldn't have to set that up yourself.
okay. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, well, it sounds like maybe you guys should exchange information. But Matt, is there any, what do you, or Matt and Henry, if there's any way you want people to get in touch with you, but.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, even if anybody just wants to like talk through any aspect of Visly, or there's, I couldn't see who made the comment about pricing, but you know, would also love to have that conversation, just going to learn from your experience. But you can reach me at matt@visly.co. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Doors are always open, more than happy to chat. Even if there's no interest in product, if it's just about exchanging learnings and stuff, that's brilliant as well.
Cool. Awesome. All right, well, Matt, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time, and I'll let you guys go, and then we'll finish the last little bit in the room here.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Take care.